G'day guys, Smith City here for Smith City Prog Reviews. We're here with some more reading of the Coffin Confessor, Bill Edgar. We've got an Aganorsa leaf cigar, which said would pair well with this the third in the series, late night salted caramel pretzel imperial stout at 12% by range. So I'll get the drink sorted first, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. I really enjoyed reading the start of it, and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into some more. So thank you, Bill, for sharing my review on your Facebook. I wasn't too sure reading someone's book whether that's actually a legal thing or if someone would like that as an author, because obviously, you know, you've put a lot of time and effort into this book. I didn't want to be someone who just reads your book from start to finish online and then people don't buy it. So if you see it or you want to buy it online, give it a look. So salted caramel pretzel stout from range. A little bit more of a head than the banana pancake stout. Still got that dark, dirty head, and it's going to go down pretty quickly. We'll have a quick sip. Heavy on the coffee. It's got a nice caramel, sort of burnt toffee note. And you're getting like this malty, it's very subtle. If you gave me that can prior to knowing what it was called, I'd probably just think it was a caramel coffee imperial stout. But with the pretzel being on there, it's sort of just on the back end. That is quite lovely. It should pair well with this Aganorsa leaf. So the next chapter in the book is going global, I think it's called, or something of that nature, which probably talks about how he sort of came into a bit of fame. So is that just going to come off naturally, or am I going to have to? Don't want to damage the cigar, but it's got like a little masking tape strip along this thing, so hopefully didn't have to unsticky tape that. So probably go a bit more. There we go. If you don't want to see this startup bit and you want to just get straight to the book, fast forward. That's the beauty of YouTube. quite nutty and robust and spicy, so it goes well with the salted caramel notes of that stout. Let me just rearrange some things. How's everyone doing? And let's get stuck in, shall we? Bring over my ashtray before I get started. All right. I don't think I'll read all of this chapter. I had a bit of a skim through it. It is a long chapter and I kind of want to get to his next story. Okay, chapter 2, going global. Recently I've had to face an elephant in the room. It's something I never anticipated when I agreed to crash my first funeral. The elephant is I've become something of a celebrity. Believe me, it wasn't my doing or my intention. I got a media profile quite by accident, but hey, it is what it is. It began, let me just get more comfortable. That's better. It began not long after my first couple of crashed funerals. Reporters started calling and requesting interviews. I wasn't sure if it was a good idea to expose myself to public scrutiny, especially since I was a private detective whose livelihood depended on discretion and keeping a low profile. But the more I thought about it and talked it over with my wife Lara, the surer I became that what I was doing wasn't legal, immoral, or to the detriment of the dead and dying. I was offering my voice to those who couldn't speak. Not just my voice, but my arrogance and attitude too. I've got aggro to spare for those so-called loved ones lingering by the deathbed of a relative or friend in hope that they will be named in the will. It's those vultures and fake friends that allow me to crash funerals without caring what they think of me. I don't give a F about them. My compassion and duty of care are reserved for my clients, and that's what I wanted to put on the record when I agreed to speak to the media. I was inundated with requests for interviews, but agreed to just one, with a reporter not too far from where I lived near the Gold Coast. To my surprise, that one interview went global. It became clear that one story wasn't going to be enough, and soon I had journalists from all over the world wanting to know more. I had no choice but to step in front of a camera and tell the world about the Coffin Confessor, and to be honest, I quite liked it. I wasn't sure what the public would make of my crashing funerals though. Part of me was expecting people to react with disgust or horror, but I was surprised to find that most people seemed to like what I was doing, or if they didn't like it, they understood. Sure, there were some who thought it was disrespectful or distasteful, but I was taken aback by how understanding and interested people were. Would have been a big call to come out, especially doing something so private like he says, and something as discreet as what he says, to make that judgment call of sharing it with media. I remember when I started my PT business in 2020, which I've just recently shut down, and lockdowns hit, gyms closed, and I had to move all my services online while being a plumber's labourer. And coming home covered in mud after 14-hour days, and moving all my stuff online, creating modules and worksheets and exercise programs and all this sort of stuff, and running on 2-3 hours sleep. And yeah, you know, you get backlash and you get people thinking that you're doing the wrong thing or whatever. And obviously fast forward to now, when I first came up to Canberra, I was given the opportunity to work in the gym that I train in. And I said, unless you've got 30 clients for me, I'm not interested, because I wasn't going to be paying gym rent and going backwards and, you know, nearly being bankrupt 3 times. I wasn't going to put myself through that again. Was it the right call? Who knows? You know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And obviously I couldn't get traction in a saturated market online, and that's just how it is. So yeah, it would have taken a lot of guts to make that decision of speaking to the media, especially when media can snippet things or edit things in a way to paint a narrative. So yeah, good on you for just saying stuff it and just going with it. Anyway, went off on a bit of a ADHD tangent, so just got to get back to where I was talking. When the reporters started calling, I chose to look on the sunny side. Suddenly, I was doing media all over the world. I went from PI work, discreetly camping outside cheap motels, to photograph cheating blokes stepping out on their wives. Let's face it, if men kept their D's for their partners and people were true to their vows, PIs would be out of a job. To fielding calls from Hollywood producers who wanted to buy the film rights to my story. For a while, I was doing 2 to 3 media appearances a day. In the morning, I'd be on Australia radio. At lunchtime, I'd be on national TV in South Africa. Then I'd record an interview for a podcast out at the US. It went nuts, which is kind of cool. I figured every media appearance was free advertising and would get the word out to the people who needed my services, so I always said yes. Before I continue, I've obviously got some more cigars, and I'll be continuing to read this. So pick a chapter and the next chapter. So comment down below what chapter you'd like me to read from, because like I said, I don't want to read this from start to finish, because I think that's a bit disingenuous to the author. So comment a chapter, and the most people that say that chapter, I will read next review. I thought I'd embrace it by getting custom COF and FSR number plates, Confessor number plates on my favourite car. If that sounds like it's in bad taste, then remember who I am and what I do, and the service I was advertising. Why not boast about it on my ride? For the record, it was a 1974 Ford XB Coupe. For readers who aren't into muscle cars, the XB Coupe is similar to the one that Mad Max drove around Australia after the apocalypse. It's a beautiful car, one you can hear coming from miles away, but that of course was an issue. The car loudly announced I'd arrived at a client's funeral, giving those the deceased confronted a chance to F off before proceedings began. I made my job a little bit easier on one hand and a little harder on the other. The biggest downside was the mourners were now focusing on me rather than their dearly departed. In the early days, I thought I'd try out an idea for a side business while I had everyone's attention. People from all around the world were reaching out wanting to meet the Coffin Confessor. For the most part, they were people who didn't want to hire me. Some got in contact just because they wanted to meet me. They looked to me for some kind of wisdom or perspective, or the fact that they were going to die. That, or they wanted a shocking, controversial experience they could tell their friends about. So I thought, why not kill two birds with one stone? I decided to explore a concept that's controversial as crashing funerals, but a lot more hands-on. Coffin camping. That sounds very interesting. I'll continue. A chance for people to come and stay on my property, meet the Coffin Confessor, and get an up-close and personal look at their own mortality by experiencing a night in a coffin. Wow. The concept gripped the media as much as anyone else, but it was over almost as soon as it began. I designed a campsite on my property, a lovely bit of land on the edge of rainforest on Tamarine Mountain near the Gold Coast. I tucked in 3 shipping containers, one converted into a recreational room with a lounge and a bar, the other 2 converted into tomb-like bedrooms, tomb-like bedrooms, each with 2 coffins set up for a bit of internal slumber, at least for one night. The idea was to provide something like a sensory deprivation float tank, encouraging people to spend a night contemplating death and exploring the inner self and have fun, cathartic experience at the same time. So let's backtrack. Let's say good old Bill didn't get any traction and didn't get exposed to the media, and he went ahead with that. You wonder if anyone would have been interested, or if people would have had their opinion that he was some sort of unsavory character, getting someone to come to your lot to sleep in a coffin without knowing the backstory. A lot of people would be thinking, like, what the hell's up with this? But opinions, very interesting. Everyone's got one, but it doesn't mean you're right. All that yabbering nearly made the cigar go out. After a couple of months research and development, I was ready for business. I listed the unique concept on Airbnb and was immediately inundated with requests, mostly from journalists. They all wanted to try before they die, and I was happy to oblige. To be honest, I didn't expect it to be so popular. I thought I'd get 1 or 2 curious punters, maybe some goth kids on their honeymoon. Before it ended, I did meet some rather intriguing people. Many campers came just to meet the Coffin Confessor and confess all sorts of effed up family secrets they felt they could share with me. Speaking of effed up, coffin camping quickly became that. It was a good idea in theory, but in practice, it was a nuance. People kept trespassing on my property, taking photos, driving past, screaming things out the window. Some would even pull up to the gate and yell requests for their burial. Bury me in Satan, pour one out on my grave. That was annoying. After just 2 weeks, someone offered to buy the whole concept, so I closed up shop. Coffin camping came and went faster than a fat kid falls on seesaws. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. I'm gonna have to fix that up later, hold on. I wasn't unhappy to see the back of it. The way it played out, I couldn't get through a day without a tourist rocking up to my property and wanting something from me, and I'd already had a lot on my plate. I'm just going to have a bit of a skim. If you want to read the full story, buy the book. All right, I found something interesting. Just recently, a funeral home in Colorado in the US was raided because neighbors reported a terrible smell. Investigators went in, did their thing, and found 189 decaying bodies on the premises. It wasn't a serial killer's morbid horde, just a terminally dodgy funeral company not doing their job. I'm going to need to fix that, guys. I'm going to put the book down so I don't burn it. That bothers me. So I'm just going to try to be honest, I probably made it more uneven. Let's just see. It'll do. Where was I? For whatever reason, the bodies hadn't been burnt and fake cremation papers had been filed. Worse, the families were given some ashes, which might have in retrospect been concrete powder disguised as human remains. That's so bad. So a bunch of American families who thought they were scattering grandma on the shore of a lake were actually flinging around cement while her body was rotting away in some cool room. That's messed up. That is so messed up. It's an extreme case. Thankfully, it's not common for the wrong body to be at the wrong funeral, but shit happens. Anyway, Marcus was adamant nothing like that was going to happen to him and wanted someone to check halfway through the funeral that they were burying the right corpse. In his final days, he wondered who he could trust. I think I missed a little bit, but he did. Who did he even know that had the balls to open a coffin midway through a service and double check the right order had come out of the kitchen? He thought about asking a family member or a good mate, but didn't want a loved one to have the image of him dead in a box in their memory banks forever. Plus, he didn't want there to be a fight between family and friends. Then he heard about me and the light bulb went off, and so he engaged the Coffin Confessor. Easy enough. So if you want to hear the start of that story with Marcus, buy the book. Buy the book. His only other request was that I make a bit of a joke of the whole thing and have a musical theme to Pop Goes the Weasel playing. Pop Goes the Weasel playing as I walk through the church and open the casket lid for no particular reason other than he thought it was the funniest possible song to play at a funeral. Easy enough, I could play it on my phone, but I wanted to make sure I was up to the task of opening the coffin during the service. That's easier said than done. Not all coffins are designed the same. Some have hinges, some are sealed in place by careful grooves in the wood. That's before you even consider hidden locks, secret openings, and so on. Coffins are often hard to open unless you have a key or a screwdriver or the manufacturer's tricks. I had to know what type of coffin my client was going to be in. I looked like a complete effing idiot struggling to open a box with Pop Goes the Weasel playing in the background. What was I supposed to do if the song ended and I was still trying to get the lid off? Start the song again? Asked the funeral director if he could help. No chance. I had to prepare and find out the type of coffin my client was going to be cremated in and take it for a test drive. This turned out to be more involved than I imagined. Some manufacturers don't want you to know their secrets and dismiss your questions, while others will gladly answer them. The reason most funeral homes are reluctant to spill their secrets is because of the markup. They buy the coffins at a certain price and add their own signature amount on top of that. Most, if not all, manufacturers refuse to sell directly to the public or risk upsetting their biggest customers, the funeral directors. Just another one of those annoying backhanded deals between businesses. This one was particularly rude because who is going to shop around and negotiate on price when they're grieving a loved one? A good rule of thumb: the higher the stakes, the bigger the graft. It's human nature for people to want to know the secrets of others, while at the same time hoping theirs will be kept safe from prying eyes and ears. But I'm very good at finding out secrets. This is a much better pairing with this than the other one. Even though it was still good, they complement each other quite nicely. They're very similar, whereas the other ones had subtle differences. So they both amplify each other. Sort of fixed it. Where was I up to? I decided to visit a number of funeral homes. The directors, thinking they had a sale on their hands, were happy to oblige. I was shown a wide variety of options: high-end, mid-range coffins, as well as coffins that resembled layers of cardboard crudely glued together. All the same basic idea, but they all had their own little quirks, and I needed to know as much as I could about each one. More importantly, I needed to know how to open them quickly and without issue. By the day of Marcus's funeral, I was probably the world's greatest expert on breaking into coffins. In prison, I once met a man who could hotwire any kind of car he came across. He knew every trick in the book to get them up and running. I felt a little like him, but with arguably a less useful skill to have in the back pocket. Turns out I didn't need to do all that homework. When I arrived at the service, Marcus was lying in a coffin I was already familiar with. Someone very dear to me was once buried in the exact same box. The only difference was this one had been customized with personalized graphics of Marcus's greatest loves, his 2 German Shepherd dogs. I had also made contingencies. As I scanned the hall, which resembled a small indoor theatre, I counted a total of 9 people, including the funeral worker who I had a quiet word with before the ceremony. I'd already arranged for him to leave the coffin unlocked in return for a little spending cash. One thing about people is that they can always be bought. While some will deny this, most quickly change their tune if you show them enough money. Well, that's very true. In my experience, most won't break the law, or nor would I, nor will I pay for the law to be broken. But I will pay for it to be bent. When I approach someone for a favour, before I offer them a cash incentive, I take their pulse, get to know them a little bit, and only then will I disclose what I need. I'll confide in them, telling them a little bit about me and my occupation, assuring them they'll never be exposed. Then I asked them their price. For this particular funeral worker, the figure was $500. So I knew the casket should be unlocked. I knew how to open it. I also knew that I also knew that what I was about to do wasn't going to go down well. When I set up my phone with Pop Goes the Weasel ready to play at the touch of a button, I had a rare moment of doubt. Was this a little insensitive, I wonder, for a second? My finger hovered over the button, and then I realised that I'd already promised the guy in the box I would do this. This wasn't my funeral, and therefore not my choice. I'm the Coffin Confessor, I thought. Who am I to have feelings? As I entered the hall, I pressed play on my phone, and the song blasted out. I walked up to Marcus's coffin, grabbed the side, and hoped like hell it would actually open. Sure enough, pop the lid came off. Pop Goes the Weasel. Sure enough, it was definitely Marcus inside. To be honest, he didn't look very well at all, and I understood why he wanted a closed casket with a few precautions. I then closed the lid, glanced at the funeral director, and gave him a nod. As I was leaving, a young bloke in a dark suit, my inside man, yelled out, "Is he in there, mate? Hey, mate, is Marcus in the coffin?" In most cases, I have an inside man or woman, a close family member, friend, or confidant of the deceased. Who knows, I'll be there. I'm just picturing all these scenarios, especially from the first chapter, and I'm just picturing them in my head. And yeah, that first one where he stands up and says, "Shut up, sit down, shut up, or F off." The man from the grave's got something to say. Like, can't imagine what thoughts or anxiety or fear that would have been running through at that point in time. Maybe they were a little bit more subdued because of your past of like being in jail and the things that you'd already been through, but still would have been full on to, yeah, it would have taken a lot of balls to just do that. So yeah, I don't think I could. Before I continue reading, have I told you to buy the book? I think you should buy the book. These people are necessary to keep me informed about the client's health, death, and date and time of funeral. They are also a legal witness of what follows. Should anything go awry, it hasn't yet, but I make sure to dot every I and cross every T, so they're in on it. But even they have no idea what I'll actually do to disrupt the funeral until I stand up. I also need these people to confirm I've done the job well. I turned and gave him a nod and left, my effing Pop Goes the Weasel still playing on my phone. I have to admit, while Marcus may have found the idea funny, I found it confronting. Maybe it was a bit too close to home. Sometimes I feel my life is a tune with that silly little song. Some days I'm fending off reporters, other I'm going on TV, or reading proposals and scripts, or getting excited by the prospects being brought to the table. But for some reason, when the music stops, the Confessor sometimes pops. In the back of my mind, I know that as my profile grows, it'd be harder and harder for me to serve clients like Marcus. His request would never have happened if the reporters who kept trying to find footage of me crashing a funeral had learnt of it and crashed it themselves. At the same time, the media keeps raising awareness on my service, and I keep getting new requests I feel I have to honour. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, I might just skip the rest of going global and just go to the next chapter. I don't know whether some of that's going to make the next story have missing holes in it, but let's find out together. Before we continue, let's read off the back. Late Nights 3 is the third release in this year's Stout SZN Barrel Aged Stout release for V3. With blended Imperial Stout that's been aged in Buffalo Trace, Cape Byron Distilling, just like the other one, and Heaven Hills barrels. Then layered in salted caramel and pretzel for that sweet and savoury late night treat. From the barrels, expect medium oak, caramelised brown sugar, light chocolate, sweet whiskey, and a complex raisin note to finish. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That pretzel note's just on the back end. With that little bit of saltiness on the back end. Thanks for bearing with me. Chapter 3, paid in full. It was a effing cold night, just like tonight in Canberra. Philip recalled, I remember how cold it was, even for that part of the country. It was late at night on a lonely road outside Orange, New South Wales, in the high country around 250 kilometres west of Sydney. At that altitude, winters have an edge on them. Orange is the only major city in Australia to see snowfall on a regular basis. The roads are tricky, especially when there's ice, they are iced over. That's why Philip was taking extra care winding his Mack truck through the country, transporting a container of fresh produce. A young trucker of limited means, the midnight route brought in a bit of extra cash. Cold roads, cold air, so cold that Philip had to crank the aircon in the cabin to stop the windows fogging up. So cold that he didn't see the car wrecked by the side of the road until he was almost on top of it. It was a Holden sedan, a good solid car, but it was wrapped around a power pole like a scarf. Philip slammed on the hydraulic brakes and pulled his truck up as close as he could get. The accident couldn't have happened long ago. Steam was still billowing out of the Holden radiator. It must have cracked, but no surprise there. The car was split practically in two. Through the window, Phillips could see what looked like a human arm hanging limp through the wreckage of the car door. There was no movement from within the car. No movement either on the road. No one coming or going along the long stretch of highway. It was a lonely road, a terrible place for an accident. This was back before mobile phones, so Philip called for help on his two-way radio. After speaking to several other truckers who relayed his call to emergency services, he was told that an ambulance and police were on their way. So he grabbed his torch, got out of the truck, and made his way to the wrecked car. What he thought was a human arm wedged in the mangled driver's side door was definitely that. It just wasn't attached to a body. Whoa, that's heavy. The body belonged The body it belonged to was in the ditch on the side of the road, where it must have been flung by the impact. Blood pooled under the body. There was blood everywhere, more blood than Philip had ever seen, and he had seen a lot. Before he became a trucker, he worked in an abattoir. Wow. This is pretty full on content, guys. So if you're any all squeamish, it'd probably be best to click off the video. The old driver was dead. His companion, a woman, was still in the passenger seat. Her seatbelt was on, but it hadn't helped. From the angle of her neck and the colour of her skin, Philip could tell she was dead before he felt for her pulse. He checked anyway, leaning into the car. It seemed the woman had been going through her handbag at the time her companion had lost control. Her belongings were scattered everywhere. Lipstick, purse, money, a lot of money. A thick bundle of cash was lying on the floor. Hold on a second, I just got to clear my throat from that cigar, and you don't want to be hearing that on camera. I'm not too sure if you heard that, but hopefully you didn't. Where was I? So, a thick bundle of cash was lying on the floor, miraculously untouched by blood. Philip stared at the cash. He looked up and down the road. Still deserted, still cold, and effing lonely. Not a soul in miles, no witnesses. Emergency service were on their way, but there was nothing they could do now except provide a hearse for the poor couple. Philip turned back to the money and made a choice. He put it in his pocket. The money changed everything. Fast forward a few decades, and Philip's life was good. He was still a truck driver, but nowadays he owned the company he drove for. Money was not a problem. His health was fine. He had a great relationship with his wife and children. He had a reputation as a hard worker and a smart businessman. But he had this secret, and it was eating him up inside. For over 30 years, he was sure that if he told anybody what he had done that night, it would destroy him, his integrity, his good standing, and everything he loved and had worked so hard for. He never knew the names of the couple who'd been killed in the accident. In truth, he never wanted to know. He thought knowing their names would make what he had done more personal. It would make him feel even worse than he already did. Philip tried desperately to erase it from his memory, and as the years went by, that's exactly what happened. He repressed the memory of that dead couple he'd stolen from and became part-time philanthropist. He donated excess of $250,000, paying it forward to charities and soup kitchens, and even paying the rent, groceries and power bills that struggling people in his community couldn't afford themselves. His charity helped him live with what he had done all those years ago. So you look at cause and effect, okay? So had he not taken that money, maybe he never goes down that path of being a philanthropist and donating a lot of money to charity. And same thing with my PT business. If I never started that, maybe I don't try to get out of car debt because of the lockdowns, and I don't start a scenario where people help me pay it off my car, which I had a company vehicle at the time with my plumbing job, and I was able to give my personal car to a flood victim that went through the floods in Lismore. Where that was the last sort of trip that I had with my old man, where we drove all the way to Lismore and we gave it to a young girl that had helped a lot of people in and out of the floods. And she had an old battered up Camry where the doors didn't open and the windows didn't close and stuff. So cause and effect. Had he not have taken that money, maybe he never does philanthropy work. So there's always good and bad. There's always good in bad, and there's always bad in good. And all that showed is that man, Philip, had a conscience and actually had a good moral compass. Where was I up to? Did I just turn the page? Yeah. For a while, his charity helped him live with what he had done all those years ago. For a while. Eventually, his demons caught up with him on another lonely road. As the boss of his company, Philip still loved driving trucks. But nowadays, he could choose his routes and rarely drove interstate. But through some wild twist of fate, he ended up driving a lovely road in a similar part of New South Wales on another lonely night when he came across another accident, and it all came back like it was yesterday. It's common enough, especially for men of certain generations. You can repress a trauma to the extent that you can carry on with your life, but you never know when you'll experience something that will trigger a flashback so vivid that it can be emotional, confronting, controlling all at the same time. These memories that seeing this latest accident brought back haunted Philip until they drove him to finally confront them. He decided it was time to find out the identities of the couple whose money he had stolen. So he contacted me and engaged my services. Philip was the rare client who approached me to settle matters of life and death when he himself was a long way from the grave. His physical health was fine, but the guilt was doing his head in, and he thought finding out who the couple were and making amends would stop them haunting him, and I was happy to help. Before I continue reading, feel free, no judgment. Anything in the comment section you want to share of maybe some things that you've done wrong that have led you to the right path, or things that you've done right that have led you to the wrong path, and things that you may have regretted at the time that sort of have led you to having a positive influence or a positive direction in other people's lives, because that would be fascinating. So if you can comment on that, that'd be fantastic. It didn't take me long to track down the details of the accident. 2 dead adults, 1 male, 1 female, single motor vehicle accident outside Orange. A white VL Commodore left the road at high speed, hitting a power pole. The driver was suspected falling asleep at the wheel. Their names were easy to find. From there, a routine investigation locating people who had known them uncovered their story. Josh and Izzy were middle-aged sea changers who had arrived from South Africa to settle in Broome. I had a stint in Broome. Well, I did disability work in Fitzroy Crossing, and we took clients there. Well, I took clients there to Broome for respite, and I absolutely loved that. South Africa to settle in Broome, Western Australia, where they brought and ran a small diving boat business. They'd brought the business before they migrated, but they soon found themselves disappointed. After a few months, they decided to pack up shop and travel around Australia. Basically, wherever the wind took them. While they didn't have a set destination or any special plans, Izzy was eager to explore. So that's how they ended up just outside Orange in New South Wales. Unfortunately, that's where the travels ended for Josh and Izzy, but not for Philip. After telling him all this, he took a few minutes to process it. He asked if the couple had surviving family and if leaving anything to them would help. I answered carefully. Their family was well off. I don't think the money would have made a big difference to their grief. In my view, tracking them down and confessing to the theft would only bring more pain. That fact that he'd kept the memory of Josh and Izzy's lonely death alive all these years and assisted so many in paying it forward was a much better way to remember the dead. Honestly, I believe you'd done enough. You can only fix what you can fix, and the accident wasn't your fault. Maybe it's time for you to put it to rest. I meant it. I've heard all types of stories and seen all types of things, and it takes a lot to shock me. Honestly, Philip stealing from 2 victims when he was the first responder to an accident was an appalling act. I wonder how many people have been in similar situations and had to live with that sort of guilt. Not many, I hope. I'll never forget being the first responder to an accident when I was working as a removalist. I also was a removalist. That's a story for another time, because I nearly myself because of it. But anyway, that's another story. My colleague and I came across a car that had hit a power pole. As we rushed to help, we could see 2 elderly people inside the vehicle, a male driver and a female passenger. My colleague ran around to the passenger side and tried to assist the woman who was bleeding from her forehead. He then tried to help the driver by giving him CPR. Unfortunately, the man was beyond help. Maybe that memory sticks out for me because it was the first time I had seen somebody die in my arms. I can't imagine that if I'd noticed a pile of cash in the car, I would have snatched it. If you were to ask me about the colour of the car, or if I saw a wallet or handbag or any other valuable items, I couldn't tell you. My focus was solely on the man and the woman. So I didn't exactly approve of Philip's actions, but he was just a kid. 30 years and $250,000 is more than enough to spend on a guilty conscience. I know all too well what it's like to live with guilt. When I was a street kid, I stole, lied, cheated every chance I got in order to survive. Money meant the difference between having a full belly and a safe place to sleep, or take my chances on the underbelly of the Gold Coast. Theft was my only way to get money then, and there have been occasions since where I've slipped. So before I continue, Bill, if you have gotten this far in the video, I want you to know that I'm really proud of you, because obviously little snippets of your past life have come up, and to do what you do now is fantastic. You know, I first started as a volunteer in the youth work field. I got qualified, and because of my age, no place wanted to employ me, so I did volunteer work living with kids that would otherwise be homeless. The other lead tenant that was there, fast forward, he's the one where I started working in Fitzroy Crossing, because he started his own business, working in a rural community. So anyway, that's for another situation. But then from that, I worked in resi care, and You know, you see a lot of people that have been through a lot worse than what I have, and I've been through some pretty horrific stuff. And I do remember in that lead tenant program where I was acting as a mentor, living with otherwise homeless youth. And I've forgotten his name, but he was getting caught up in drama in the house. One night we're making dinner, he was doing his own dinner, I was making my dinner, and I just put him aside and said, look, you've just come into this house and you don't need to go down the path that this person is. You know, either he's going to go down a horrible path or he's going to catch himself and he's going to find his way out, but you don't need to go down that same path. I said, so you've got choices that you can make now, mate. You know, you can either go down this very dark road this other young person's going down, or you can start to make subtle changes, and those subtle changes will turn into big changes, whatever. Anyway, I was there for 7 months, and then the company I was volunteering with gave me a job. At that time, I had moved in with my then girlfriend, and probably maybe like it wasn't. It was probably like maybe a year or 2 years later, or even 3 years later, yeah, because he did say that. So 3 years later, there was a training day working in Resi. I was in the city, caught the train to Richmond, because I'm originally from Melbourne. Get off the train, trying to catch my bearings of where to go for this training day. Get to a set of traffic lights, and I just hear, Michael, and I turn around, and it's this old mate from the you know, the lead tenant program of where I was a mentor. He was wearing black, and it was covered in like plaster marks all over his jumper. And he's just like, oh, it's so good to see you, man. He's like, if it wasn't for you, he goes, I don't know what life I would have had. And now I'm, you know, 3 years into my plaster's apprenticeship, and you know, my life's doing really, really well. And for that, I thank you. And I said, mate, like, at the end of the day, I'm only as good as the people that want to listen and the people that want to help. I said, I could have given you that same spiel back in that kitchen, and you could have just not been in the right frame of mind, told me to get effed, or even not listened and just continued to go down that horrible path that you were going down. I said, so, you know, all this positive stuff is on you, mate. And we sort of shook hands, and then we went on our merry way, and I've never seen or heard from him again. So I don't think he'll ever see this video, but if he does, I hope he's doing well in life. And if he isn't, somehow, if you see this video, reach out, mate. Find a way to find my number, and we'll have a chat. All right. So, where was I up to? Occasions where I've slipped. Yep. Over the years, raising 2 children and working odd jobs with never enough cash. I occasionally thought about stealing, and a few times thoughts turned into actions. I recall one afternoon after Lara and our newborn son had just moved into a caravan park. I had a job at a local Shell service station. Mate, it's funny how our lives are syncing up. So my dad, when I was a child, he used to work graveyard shift at a Hallam Shell petrol station. Anyway, pumping fuel, checking tyres and cleaning windshields. The service station also had a car wash, and I'd often been called upon to detail a car or two. I couldn't help but feel jealous when I'd be sweating my guts up cleaning some rich person's weekend drive and seeing how carelessly they had left their valuables and cash lying around. We're an hour in, but let's continue. Let me get myself another beer. Do I cut it off and do a part 1 and part 2? Yeah, I might. See you guys soon.